Okay, so I'm Claire, and I work at Late Rooms, and the title of this talk is collaboration, but given that it's only 10 minutes, I'm pretty much going to focus on pair coding as a particular type of collaboration, but I think a lot of the lessons you can learn or the things that I can say about pair coding actually apply more generally to good collaboration practices as a team. I had my first software engineering job almost exactly 20 years ago, so it was October 95, I think. And apparently I discovered today Agile was around in the 90s, but I certainly hadn't heard of it. You know, I had no idea of its existence, and I didn't find out for a few years. But if at that point you had said to me that you had introduced the concept of sitting with another developer all day and working on the same computer at the same time, I would have been horrified. And certainly a few years later, when I and my colleagues did first hear about it, we were horrified. It was like, you must be kidding, you know, I mean, that just sounds like hell. And now I do use pair coding on a daily basis. At Late Rooms, I'm using pair coding, and also the team is more collaborative than anywhere else I've ever worked. So I have used pair coding at one other company, on a regular basis, but only one other company in 20 years, and I love it. But I've only been at Late Rooms for a few weeks, and I've been thinking about it a lot, and I've been thinking why I love it, you know, and what's good about it. So you know, that's basically what I want to talk about. But there are disadvantages as well as advantages. And I used to be a high school maths teacher, and one of the things that you learn as a teacher is something called the sandwich technique, which is where you praise and then you criticise and then you praise again. So I'm going to do a few advantages, a few disadvantages, and then I'm going to come back to the advantages so that we end on a happy note. But can I just ask people to just shout out, you know, give me what you think is an advantage of pair coding. Quality. Hands up, sorry?
Quality.
Quality, okay, yep, so you get quality code as a result. The code has a better quality, okay? Gemma? What's that?
Getting to check Twitter.
Okay, you get to check Twitter. That's interesting. So you reckon that you get to do that more as a part of pair coding?
I'm surely you'll be so right.
Okay, well that was going to come up as one of the disadvantages, actually. So there you go. But more advantages?
Learning from other people.
Learning from other people. That's a brilliant one. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to go through my list. Some of this has already been covered. So I've got plugging gaps in each other's knowledge, which is, you know, the learning from each other. And I one company that I did work for, which was when I started to become more aware of collaborative practices. I worked for a company. Mark worked for the same company, where we were very much encouraged to ask questions. And when I arrived there, that was a breath of fresh air, because I had worked for companies, in fact, I had worked for a company in the past, where all of the really important knowledge was in the heads of 2 people. And, you know, we all needed to ask some questions all the time, and they were never available because they were always firefighting and they were the only people who knew anything. And, you know, I didn't like asking questions, but I didn't like mithering people, and I didn't want to look stupid. And so to be in an environment where questions were not only encouraged, but supposedly you could be sacked if you didn't ask enough of them, I mean, that was a breath of fresh air. And in pair coding, being able to actually say to somebody, I'm not sure what's the best way of doing this, and then learn from somebody, the person who's sitting right next to you, you know, a better way of doing it, or just, you know, finding out what's in their head, that's just really useful. So that's a great one. Getting help when you're stuck. Another company that I worked for, actually the same one where there were the 2 people who were really clever, I sat on a piece of software for weeks that I was barely making any progress on. And I could, because there weren't daily updates. Nobody was really asking me questions about what I was doing. In fact, I think that we thought that we were respecting each other by not mithering each other. And so I could just, you know, get stuck, not ask for help. The longer I left it, the more embarrassed I was, the harder it was to admit that actually I don't know what I'm doing. I'm completely stuck. If you've got somebody sitting next to you, you get stuck, you know, they know about it instantly. You can ask them, you're going to get help. And if both of you get stuck, I think it's a lot easier as a pair to say, we're stuck, than as an individual, because there's a bit less of that thing, oh God, I'm looking stupid. But if you're both stuck, then, you know, it's easier to say to other members of the team, we're stuck. Another one is that when it does go wrong, you're much more likely to get back onto a good path. So, when I have a horrible tendency to fall down rabbit holes and to get distracted by some irrelevant detail. And I know I'm doing it as well, but I just think, yeah, but it's really interesting. But I really do want to know what will happen if I keep, even though I know that actually it's probably irrelevant. If there's somebody sitting next to me, I can't get away with that, And so you're much more likely to get pulled back on track when you start veering off. Because somebody's going to say, well, why? What are you doing? Why are you going in that direction? So that's another good one. Bad habits. You might have bad habits that you don't even know you've got. Or you might have bad habits that you know you've got, but you can't be asked doing anything about it. And when there's somebody, again, sitting next to you, they're more likely to notice, they're more likely to suggest other ways of doing things. You're more likely to be embarrassed by the bad habit and just not do it in the first place. So there's that one. And code reviews happen automatically. I've worked in fact, most of the companies I've ever worked for have had the concept of code review. And I've never seen it work very well, because when it's done purely by one individual writes a piece of software, another individual reviews it, because that other individual probably hasn't got time to understand it in depth, probably can't be asked to understand it in depth. You're not going to explain it to them properly. They may as well just sit next to you and do it with you, because they're going to understand it then, and they're going to be able to review it more effectively. So there's some advantages. Has anybody got any disadvantages? Sorry, say that again?
Quite stressful.
Stressful, yeah, it can be really stressful. Because, you're kind of, you're exposed. You feel vulnerable, because particularly if you think that the person sitting next to you knows more than you do, then you're just like, I'm really embarrassed, I don't know what I'm doing, I think this is really stupid, I'm just going to let them do it all, or they're going to see how crap I am, and it's just, you're constant, it's like you can feel like you're being judged and observed constantly, and that can be horrible, but I think that's a really important one to address. So one of the things that I found is really useful is to say to myself, is to consciously focus on noticing when the other person makes the same mistakes that I would make. And go, right, okay. And also notice that the other person, unless they're absolutely amazing, is going to make mistakes, isn't going to understand everything, is going to ask stupid questions, and you need to notice that. You need to think, right, so other people do that too. I'm not as stupid as I thought I was. So yeah, and you have to, it's something you have to address. And also, not only do you have to address in yourself, you have to be aware of it in other people. So if you're coding with somebody and you think they might be feeling a bit insecure, pick them up a bit, be nice to them, encourage them, let them have the keyboard, let them make mistakes and don't judge them when they do. So yeah, any other disadvantages?
Does it rob you of the chance to finish a train before someone asking a question?
That's a really good one. Yeah, so you might want to just focus on something, and because there's somebody there's a few things in that. So for instance, I've noticed that I can feel like what I really want to do at this point is just have a bit of quiet time, because this is really complicated, and I'm feeling like, because there's somebody sitting next to me, that I have to understand it really quickly. And I haven't got time to just get my head around it. So there's that, and there's also, just sometimes you can't focus, can't concentrate when there's somebody sitting next to you. At which point you say, shall we split up for a minute? Because I've done that now. I didn't do it at first because I felt kind of embarrassed and insecure, but I do that now. I say, look, this is actually really confusing me, and I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere. So is it okay if we split up, go back to our own desks, and I just want to just kind of tunnel in on it for an hour or so, and then we'll come back. And the 2 times that I have said that, 2 or 3 times, the other person has nearly always gone, oh yes, please. They felt the same way, and even if they don't, they'll, it's absolutely fine. And I think there's another disadvantage, which can be burnout. It's intense. It's really intense. It can be exhausting. You do want to look on Twitter. You want to look on Facebook. You want to answer your text. You have slow days. You come into work. You're hungover. You don't feel like working with somebody else. So you say, look, it's not a good day for me. I don't want to do pairing today. Is it okay if we just split up and work on it separately, or if I work on this other thing that I've got going on, or and that takes strength and it takes confidence, but it comes into something that I think is absolutely key, which is honesty. you know, be honest about how you feel, about how you understand, about what you think should be happening. If you're not in the mood, you know, just all of it, be as honest as you possibly can, because it really makes a difference. How am I doing for time? I forgot to put my timer on.
We're probably ahead of schedule because everyone's been well behaved so far. So.
Okay, so I'm badly behaved.
We are banking time for Matt though, so.
Okay, well, I was just checking. So, any more disadvantages?
It's a waste of resources.
It's a waste of resources. Of course it bloody is. There's 2 people. Yeah. It's a massive waste of resources. It's 2 people, probably on quite high salaries, doing one job. So, yeah, it can easily look like that. But then you think about the fact that you probably will move more quickly. You might not. You probably will. But even if you don't, you're sharing knowledge. So, you know, you're because otherwise, whatever that piece of work is, you know, no matter how much you try and make it self-commenting and try and share it, the knowledge is going to be more in the head of the person that did it. And also, chances are, within a team, you're going to have a mixture of skills, you're going to have a mixture of strengths, there are going to be things that you're good at, things that your colleagues are good at, they're not going to be the same things. By working together, you're sharing those skills, you're making yourself much more efficient, you're sharing domain knowledge. The long-term benefit of that, it's very difficult to measure, but I think it's big. And then there's the code review element of it, the QA element of it, the fact that you're so much more likely to write a quality piece of code. So, you know, it's hard to quantify, but, you know, I mean, I think probably I'm aware that I'm probably preaching to the converted. Probably, if not everybody, then most people in this room are probably already sold on it. But yeah, it's great to have an employer that gets that can see that actually it's not a loss of efficiency, or if it is, it's worth it. I've got another disadvantage is complacency, because I think what can happen is you can be very much, complacency is definitely a problem when you're working on your own. And you can assume that because you're working in a pair, therefore you can't possibly be being complacent. But actually what can happen, and I have seen it happen, is that because you're working in a pair, you assume that therefore it's bound to be quality and you're bound to be doing it the best way. Actually, you're just both making the same mistakes and you're both being lazy. And you're just assuming it'll all be fine purely by merit of being in a pair, and you know that's not necessarily true. And cutting corners. This is kind of comes back to that thing I was saying of not necessarily thinking about something in depth because you're worried about not working fast enough or pissing the other person off. So I found that sometimes you can cut corners because you don't want to look stupid or because you don't want to slow things down. So I quite often will think, actually, I'm not really sure I understood that bit, or I'm not actually convinced that was the best test, or, you know, that was the best piece of code, but I'm aware that we're in a bit of a rush, and so I won't say anything. Or I'm a bit OCD. I like to make sure that everything is right, and I know that I do that more than some other people do, and I kind of, sometimes I go, oh, I don't want to say anything, because I'm just pissing off. But don't, you know, trust your instincts. That's the kind of coder that I am. So it's at least worth me saying, look, I'm not convinced that we double checked this thing over here. Can we just check that again? At which point the other person can have an argument with me and say, well, actually, no, it's fine because it's A, B, and C. But it means that I've voiced that concern. So, you know, that's another. It can be tempting not to do that. But that's another one that you have to watch out for. So I'm going to finish with advantages. So, another advantage is that you get the opportunity to properly discuss disagreements and alternative ways of working. So, you know, if you're not convinced about the best way of doing what you don't agree, because you're sitting next to each other, you can actually talk about it properly. You know, not in a meeting where everybody's, you know, like that. Actually, properly consider what you're doing, and. I've already said this one actually, but I do think it's important is to pay attention to what other people are doing and notice that they're not perfect either. You know, and I think pair coding could easily result in you feeling insecure and miserable, or it could result in you feeling confident and happy, and the attitude that you bring to it will determine which one of those it is. So if I'd say just 2 things, ask questions, be honest. Keep doing it over and over again. Keep asking questions. Keep being as honest as you possibly can. That doesn't mean telling them when they've got BO. But if you can, be honest.